Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lenzie and Farrol, and and together with my groupmates, Miss Rochelle May Hilario and Aryan Yvonne Fajardo, we are tasked to report the behavior therapy. For my topic outline, it would be first the historical backgrounds, next is the key concepts, and lastly, the therapeutic process. For my intended learning outcomes is for the students to be able to know who are the proprietors of behavior therapy, to be able to understand the key concepts behind behavioral therapy and the therapeutic process of behavioral therapy. Now, let me introduce to you first B.F. Skinner or Boris Frederick Skinner. He was an American psychologist, behaviorist, author, inventor, and social philosopher. Skinner was a prominent spokesperson for behaviorism and can be considered the father of behavioral approach to psychology. Skinner championed the radical behaviorism, which places primary emphasis on the effects of the environment on behavior. Skinner was also a determinist. He did not believe that humans had a free choice. He acknowledged that feelings and thought exist, but he denied that they cause our actions. Instead, he stressed that cause and effect links between objective, observable environmental conditions and behavior. The next one would be Albert Bandura. Bandura and his colleagues did pioneering work in the area of social modeling and demonstrated that modeling is a powerful process that explains diverse forms of learning. In his research programs at Stanford University, Bandura and his colleagues explored the social learning theory and the prominent role of observational learning and social modeling in human motivation, thought, and action. Bandura has concentrated on 4 areas of research. The first one would be the power of psychological modeling in shaping thought, emotion, and action. The next one would be the mechanisms of human agency. The third one would be the perceptions of their efficacy to exercise influence over the events that affect their lives. And lastly, how stress reactions and depressions are caused. The next one would be Arnold Lazarus. At an early age, he felt that racism and discrimination were totally unacceptable. In 1963, he was invited by Albert Bandura to teach at Stanford University. He is a pioneer in clinical behavior therapy and the developer of multimodal therapy. In terms of clinical practice, behavioral therapy and multimodal therapy are very similar. He is recognized as the authority on brief, efficient, effective psychotherapy. The next one would be Ivan Pavlov. Came to his conclusions about how learning occurs completely by accident. Pavlov was a physiologist, not a psychologist. Physiologists study the life process of organisms, from the molecular level to the level of cells, organ systems, and entire organisms. He did an experiment with dogs where for dog salivation, which by over time he observed that dogs began to salivate not only to the taste of food, but also to the sight of food, uh, the sight of an empty bowl, and even at the sound of laboratory assistants' footsteps. Later, it would this these experiments would be concluded to by by the classical conditioning. Now, let's go to the historical background. with chronological orders. In 1950s, the traditional behavioral therapy arose simultaneously in the United States, South Africa, and Great Britain. In spite of harsh criticism and resistance from psychoanalytic psychotherapists, the approach survived. Its focus was on demonstrating that behavioral conditioning techniques were effective and were viable alternative to psychoanalytic therapy. In 1960s, Albert Bandura developed social learning theory, which combined classical and operatic conditioning with observational learning. Bandura made cognition a legitimate focus for behavior therapy. During the 1960s, a number of cognitive behavioral approaches sprang up and they still have a significant impact on the therapeutic process. In 1970s, the contemporary behavior therapy emerged as a force in psychology, where behavioral techniques were expanded to provide solutions for businesses, industry, and child rearing problems as well, known as the first wave. In the behavioral field, behavior, behavior therapy techniques were viewed as the treatment of choice for many psychological problems. The 1980s, characterized by a search for new horizons in a concept of methods that went beyond the traditional learning theory. Behavior therapists continued to subject their methods to empirical scrutiny and to consider the impact of the practice of therapy on both their clients and larger society. Two of the most significant developments in the field were the first in the field was were the continued emergence of cognitive behavior therapy as a major force and the application of behavioral techniques to prevention and treatments of health-related disorders. In the 1990s, Association for Behavioral and Cognitive Therapies, or the ABCT, claimed a membership of 4,500, where cognitive therapy is considered to be second wave of the behavioral tradition. And in the 2000s, the third wave of behavior therapy, the newest development includes dialectical behavior therapy, mindfulness-based stress reduction, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, and acceptance and commitment therapy. Here, we are now on the four areas of development of behavior. So the first one is the classical conditioning, is a type of unconscious automatic learning. This learning process creates a conditioned response to associations between an unconscious stimulus and a neutral stimulus. Refers to what happens prior to learning that creates a response through pairing. The next one would be the operant conditioning. And operant conditioning, sometimes referred as the instrumental conditioning, is a method of learning that uses rewards or punishment to modify behaviors. We already know that parent conditioning has two uses punishment and reinforcement, and there are positive and negative reinforcement and positive negative punishment. That would be explained later by my group mates. The next one would be the social cognitive theory, where its basic assumption is what people believe influence how they act and how they feel. Social cognitive theory emphasizes on the learning that occurs within a social context. In this view, people are active agents who can both influence and are influenced by the environment. By including thought processes in human psychology, social cognitive theory is able to avoid assumptions made by radical behaviorism that that all human behavior is learned through trial and error. Lastly, the cognitive behavior theory is its basic assumption is people are capable of self-directed behavior self-directed behavior change, and that the person is the agent of change. Now, let's proceed to the next topic, which is the key concepts. The first key concept is the view of human nature. The current trend in behavior therapy is toward the developing procedures that are actually give control to clients and thus increase their range of freedom. Behavior therapy aims to increase people's skills that they have more options for responding by overcoming debilitating behaviors that restricts choices. People are freer or more free to select from possibilities that were not available earlier. Increasing individual freedom By increasing individual freedom, it is possible to make a case for using behavioral methods to attain humanistic ends. There are six basic assumptions, or the six key characteristics of behavior therapy. The first one would be behavior therapy is based on principles and procedures of the scientific method. Behavior therapy deals with the client's current problems and the factors influencing them. Number three would be clients involved in behavior therapy are expected to assume an active role by engaging to specific actions to deal with their problems. This approach assumes that change can take place without insight to underlying dynamics. The focus is on assessing overt and covert behavior directly, identifying the problem, and evaluating the change. And lastly, behavioral treatment interventions are individually tailored to specific problems experienced by the clients. Now let's proceed to the next topic, which is the therapeutic processes. In doing behavioral assessment interview, the therapist's task is to identify the particular antecedent and the consequence of events that influence or are functionally related to an individual's behavior. Behavior therapists conduct a thorough functional assessment to identify the maintaining conditions by systematically gathering information about situational antecedents, the dimensions of the problem behavior, and the consequences of the problem. Now, before we begin the therapeutic process, we must first learn what are the therapeutic goals. The therapeutic goals entails a negotiation between client and counselor that results in a contract that guides the course of therapy. In general, goals of behavior therapy are to increase personal choice and to create new conditions for learning. The client, with the help of the therapist, define specific treatment in deciding about their treatment. The therapist assists clients in formulating specific measurable goals. Goals must be clear, concrete, understood, and agreed on by the client and the counselor. The counselor and the client discuss the behaviors associated with the goals and the circumstances required for change, the nature of sub goals, and a plan of action to work towards this goal. The next one was the therapist's function and role. ABC is an acronym for antecedents, behavior, and consequences. It is used as a tool for the assessment and formulation of problem behaviors and is useful when clinicians, clients, or carers want to understand that active ingredients, the active ingredients for problem behavior. So B for behavior is influenced by some particular events that preceded it, like antecedents. An antecedent event are ones that cue or elicit certain behavior. For example, with a client who has a trouble going to sleep, listening to a relaxation tape may serve as a cue for sleep induction. Turning off the lights and removing the television from the bedroom may elicit sleep behaviors as well. The next one is C, is for consequences, is are events that maintain a behavior in some way, either by increasing or decreasing it. For example, a client may be more likely to return to counseling after the counselor offers verbal praise and encouragement for having come in or having completed some homework. A client may be less likely to return after the counselor is consistently late to sessions. For a therapist to function, they must take the role of being a behaviorally oriented practitioner. The, as a practitioner, you should be active and directive, rely on heavily empirical evidence about the efficacy of techniques, use intuitive skills and clinical judgment in selecting techniques, pay close attention to clues given by the clients, and use techniques like summarizing, reflection, clarification, and open-ended questioning. Behavioral clinicians perform other functions, like strive to understand the function of the client's behavior, uses strategies that have research that support for use with a particular kind of problem, evaluate the success of the change plan, and conduct a follow-up assessment to see whether the changes are durable over time. Clients' experience in therapy. Client's awareness and participation in the therapeutic process is stressed. The client engages in behavioral rehearsal with feedback until the skills are well learned and generally receives active homework assignments. Clients must be motivated to change and are expected to cooperate in carrying, carrying out therapeutic activities, both during therapy sessions and in everyday life. If clients are not motivated in this way, the chances are slim that the therapy will be successful. However, if clients are not motivated, another behavioral strategy that has considerable empirical support is the motivational interviewing. This strategy involves honoring the client's resistance in such a way that his or her motivation to change is increased over time. Clients are encouraged to experiment for the purpose of enlarging their repertoire and adaptive behavior. Clients are as aware as the therapist in is regarding when the goals have been accomplished and when it is appropriate to terminate that treatment. Most behavioral practitioners stress the value of establishing a collaborative working relationship with their clients. For example, Lazarus in 2008 believes that a flexible repertoire of relationship styles plus a wide range of techniques enhances treatment outcomes. He also emphasizes that the need for therapeutic flexibility and versatility above all else. Most behavioral practitioners contend that factors such as warmth, empathy, authenticity, permissiveness, and acceptance are necessary but not sufficient for behavior to change to for behavior change to occur. The client therapist relationship is a foundation on which therapeutic strategies are built to help clients in the direction that they wish.